Hi, I am Maya McClatchy, and today I'm going to be talking about a case study of Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy, which is sometimes called a superstorm, hit the Caribbean and the east coast of the United States in October of 2012. Its worst impacts were in Haiti and coastal New Jersey and New York, where it caused mass displacement, death, and damaged infrastructure. The worst effects of the storm were due to wind, flooding, and the collapse of infrastructure. The hurricane system started as a Category 2 hurricane in the Caribbean around October 22nd. It first hit Haiti, Cuba, and the Bahamas and Jamaica. It then made landfall in New Jersey and New York on October 29th, at which point it was classified as a post-tropical storm. The main impacts were from gale force winds and flooding from heavy rain combined with a tidal storm surge. Overall, the winds, flooding, and infrastructure collapse affected more than 900 miles of coastline and left millions of people displaced and without power. There were an estimated 233 fatalities, and overall, it is thought to have caused about $70 billion in damage, which would be roughly equal to $96 billion today in 2025. Because the impacts of the storm were spread across so many countries, it's been a challenge for officials to get completely accurate and comprehensive data on the epidemiological impacts of Sandy. There were an estimated 233 fatalities, which were spread across 8 different countries, but were mostly concentrated in Haiti, New York, and New Jersey. There were 53 deaths recorded in New York, 34 in New Jersey, and 54 in Haiti. The CDC reports roughly 51% of the total deaths occurred in the first 2 days following the storm's landfall in New Jersey, and the majority of these deaths were due to drowning. 57% of the deaths were directly related to the storm caused by things like flooding, wind, and building collapse, while the remaining were indirectly caused from things like hazardous road conditions and carbon monoxide poisoning. Studies have also shown higher rates of emergency department visits in the week following the storm, mostly for injury and poisoning cases. However, interruptions to ongoing treatments also led to higher risk for cardiovascular, respiratory, and renal disease-related visits to the emergency room. As you can see in this photo, flooding caused major issues for travel and transportation, which prevented many people accessing medical care that they would have had otherwise. The severity of the storm was vastly underestimated early on, which led to underpreparation among both the government and individuals. The storm also highlighted a lot of weak points in New York City's power grid and telecommunication systems, as well as emergency healthcare capabilities in the city. The breakdown in communications was especially problematic for organizing the response and caused a lack of coordination between many involved agencies. As far as the international response, there was a lot of support from international aid organizations, mostly going to Haiti and New York City. Some of the biggest organizations that were involved were USAID, World Bank, FEMA, and the European Commission. These organizations were involved in some preparation efforts before the storm hit, but mostly helped with immediate relief and some aspects of recovery and rebuilding. The overall communications during Sandy were not at all well organized and resulted in miscommunication and mismanagement of resources. The communication and coordination was especially disorganized between different departments and agencies. A lot of physical communications infrastructure was destroyed, including power lines and cell towers. And this meant that most of the normal modes of interagency and public communication were not usable, and there were no real substantial alternatives in place. A lot of information ended up being shared to the public over social media. This was not well coordinated or planned, but it did end up being very important when other communications failed. This image shows a local hardware store letting people come and charge their cell phones, which were a very important lifeline during the aftermath of the storm. One of the main takeaways from Sandy is that durable communication systems are extremely important. Without communications in place, most other aspects of response and recovery are going to suffer. Additionally, Sandy was outside of the range of the size of storms that had historically been expected, and preparations were not sufficient for something of its scale. The graph on this slide shows the increase of strength and frequency of tropical storms, which clearly shows a trend that storms are continuing to get stronger and more common with climate warming. Sandy was an early example of many cities and countries being taken by surprise by extreme weather, and we have since continued to see more and more examples of this. Lessons we can learn from the response to Sandy include that we should be preparing for disasters beyond what is easily and readily predictable. Climate change means that we will be increasingly uncertain of what severe weather is going to show up, and it will always be better to be over-prepared. Thank you for listening to my presentation.